Hello and welcome to another Office Hours capsule. That's right, capsule. This is a small section of our Office Hours live stream that happens on Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come down and join us. We do talks about the latest news, lore, discussions. This is chat right here. This is live. Say hi, chat. Yeah, youtube.com/TheAstroPub live and twitch.tv/TheAstroPub. Love to see you come down here. Make sure you if you are already enjoying this content, if this is the second video you've watched on my YouTube channel, as always, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already done so, because that helps out a lot, and you'll be able to get these monthly report updates every month. I go through Squadron 42 and Star Citizen every month for you. So that's what we'll be doing today. We're talking the October Squadron 42 monthly report. And as you can already see by the length of this video, this is not a summary. There is nothing wrong with summaries. It's just that summaries tend to rely on the bias of the person reading them. And if you seriously want to know about Squadron 42 progress, if you want to know about Star Citizen's progress, then reading the monthly reports is important. But if you can't read it yourself because you just don't want to be reading anything, that's what I'm doing here. I am reading it for you. I will interject with my own, so maybe adding some context from previous monthly reports, and maybe adding a little bit more of my own thoughts on what they're talking about to try to help clarify some things. But this is just me reading the whole thing to you. So this is word for word, everything. And as always, I want to hear your thoughts about what we've read in the comments below. So make sure you do that. And without further ado, let's talk about October of 2022 Squadron 42 monthly report. All right. AI content. Throughout October, the AI content team progressed with its vendor and patron behaviors, realizing the full flow of NPCs ordering, carrying, and consuming food and drink. This gives them a sense of life and purpose, as they always are busy doing something. Progress continued on utility behavior, with AI characters opening crates, taking items out, and putting items in. This was a surprisingly complex task, but various elements are now working well together. Other tasks involved polishing the quartermaster behavior, making animation pose updates, setting up wild lines, overhauling documentation, and prototyping food eating. They also began working on Chapter 15, which is the rundown location with different feel from other areas. First mention of a chapter of this update so far. There have been multiple updates of chapters, I believe up to Chapter 24 or 25, maybe 26 even. There's upper 20s in terms of chapters. A lot of the chapters are already finished, and this, I haven't heard about this before, so it's probably something they're working on right now. It's important to note that people have talked about this because this is pretty much the same as the last monthly report for Star Citizen. And people mentioned, why do they always work on more mess hall behavior? And it's important to keep this in context. It's very complicated to have a bunch of AI in a very tight space going through a line, picking out food or hitting a button to consume food while carrying a tray or a table or like a plate or something like that, or getting drinks, then going in, sitting down at a table, eating and drinking and having conversations while doing that, all without bumping into each other or any of that. That behavior is not something that they're going to script. It's something that the AI will do on their own based off of their behavior, because it's a lot easier for them to build that out, because then they can add that to Squadron 42, rest of Squadron 42, and Star Citizen, rather than having to custom build AI to behave that way in specific areas. That's why they keep talking about it, because it's an incredibly complicated process that if they can get that down, they can do a lot of other things, similar to how the bartender was the basis for a lot of other things, a lot of other behavior that will happen with vendors. So, all right, AI features. Last month, the AI animators continued to refine Vandal execution animations. to ensure that they've perceived as strong and impactful from the first-person perspective. They are better suited to be played on the spot if attack occurs in a cramped space, are more believable to be deflected by a player, and allow players to escape and or attack once deflected. So this is pretty cool because this tells us a couple of things. One, they're doing execution animations. Two, they're going to be affected by the location. And three, you can block execution animations and or block and counter execute animations. I make this joke all the time whenever they talk about Van Duel, but whenever they mention the Van Duel, I'm sitting here going, they've played way too much Elden Ring or Dark Souls. That's just what they do. All right. On perception system side, the AI team implemented functionality to allow them to rate and respond to disruptions, which are unexpected scenarios that can be resolved. For example, lights of a room turning off or an engine being disabled. Players can use this mechanic to try and disrupt NPC behaviors when they haven't been detected, giving them the opportunity to better infiltrate the level by avoiding patrols and sentries. Players also can use distractions, actions that trigger audio stimuli such as throwing an object, cause NPCs to leave their positions to investigate. We had to ensure that these events are propagated out of to all agents within the appropriate area, that they are handled by the perception system, rated against the current threat level, and that the correct behaviors are implemented to resolve the disruptions. The resolution may involve agents going to investigate the source of the disruption, or alternatively, if too many disruptions have occurred, increase their alertness level. This means that they may take out their weapons, say specific alertness level wild lines, or respond quicker to subsequent events. We also had to take into consideration that the immediate source of the disruption may not be what the NPC wants to investigate. For example, the agent may perceive that a light goes out, but they would want to investigate the light switch that controls the light, and ultimately, if they don't encounter the player, turn the lights back on again. AI features team. October also saw AI implement rocket launcher and railgun handling. For rocket launchers, NPCs have to consider if the shot will cause explosive splash damage to friendly agents. This check can be disabled using friendly fire trait to enable more reckless enemies. For railgun, they changed to how behavior works in cover. Now NPCs will start charging the weapon while in cover before emerging to fire. For both of these weapons, the team disabled the standard check to see if the weapon can hit the target, so enemies will continue to fire at the target when in cover. This allows the player to see if these weapons are being fired nearby and respond accordingly, rather than being immediately hit upon leaving cover. As part of this work, they are also review the existing shouldered weapon animations. That's pretty cool. The same thing they had in Star Citizen's monthly report. But to kind of reiterate this means that this kind of shows you the trait system at play. What do they call it? The trait system, which is this tag system that they can slap onto NPCs to turn them into whatever they want to. And they can add more of these traits to get more interesting behaviors from the NPCs. You want them to be reckless. You want them to be cowardly. You want them to be cautious. All these different things will have different resulting behaviors as they added these traits. And then they can swap these traits out for other things as they need to. So, which is pretty cool. It shows you the kind of the robustness of the AI system they're building. Continuing with weapon usage, AI features implemented how NPCs pick up weapons and ammunition during combat. Enemies are under the same ammunition constraints as the player, requiring them to conserve it and use other weapons when they're out. NPCs will evaluate the best course of action in this situation, including switching to their secondary weapon, picking up ammunition, or finding a new weapon altogether. When looking for ammunition, they could take it from boxes out of loose weapons or from stowed weapons on dead incapacitated characters. When looking for weapons, they could get them from racks, find them around the area, or take them from other characters. To implement this, weapons were set up as usables, which allows the AI to search for the best usable that can provide ammo or weapon. The team had to modify the usable system slightly, including adding support for usables that supply themselves loose weapons or ammo, and ensuring that usable alignment positions are correctly aligned with gravity when the weapon or ammo falls. For non-combat AI, the team worked to functionality to support NPCs moving cargo from one location to another, including picking up crates, stacking them on a trolley, moving the trolley to a destination, such as a cargo hold, and then taking them off the trolley and restacking them. An existing prototype was also adapted to the new tech to provide behaviors that can be used in varying locations to bring them to life. They also refined tools to generate better quality cover. This included making cover generation more robust to edge cases and supporting recognition of cover over a certain distance from identified cover edges. This allows cover to be generated in a greater range of areas. Finally, AI features took the first steps towards implementing Buddy AI that will support gameplay where a player is accompanied by one or more characters. To begin with, they made rapid prototype features featuring some of the functionality that might be required to generate conversations about what the final form would look like and how it would fit into the gameplay. So a lot of people, this is again, same thing on Star Citizen. A lot of people have been saying, "Oh, this is escort missions, great." And I think it's less likely to be escort missions and more like the Marines in Halo, where they kind of follow you around. You can like once you get close to them, you can get them to like follow you around, hop into vehicles, that kind of thing. I think that's more what they're talking about. Like your wingman lands with you, you have point, they follow your lead, sort of thing. All right, AI tech. Last month, the AI tech team made several usability improvements to the Apollo subsumption tool. This included updating the multigraph with feature folders and functions to allow organization from outline view. For example, the designers are now able to delete and move graphs to different folders directly from the outline view panel. They can also drag a node connection to an empty section of the graph to open up a drop-down menu that allows them to create a new task. The subsumption tool is like you have these different nodes that you can draw lines to, which will determine how the player will move, what their behavior is, like if-then scenario sort of things. And that's where the tag system, the trait system comes into play, I believe. Could be wrong with that one, but I think that's you'll see it whenever they talk about AI. They pull up the subsumption tool and they'll show it to you. Minor usability improvements were made too, including allowing the entities in the outline view to collapse and the addition of a new filter field in a variable tree view. They also extended the graph view with a new custom view style. This is currently used to allow Apollo to open, visualize, and edit master graph files that were previously managed by hand. For perception, the team worked on supporting audio noise level and audio masking. Audio noise level erasures that audio stimuli, or ensures that audio stimuli don't surpass the basic background noise, won't be heard by listeners. New tools were implemented to allow for the designers to configure audio noise level in an area and type of sounds that would be considered normal in that area. Audio masking makes sure that the particular audio stimuli are not perceived as anomalous. For example, explosions in a field where fireworks are tested. This allows the player to use the environment as audio cover when performing actions. For example, firing a weapon as near a shooting range as not to alert NPCs. Frickin' Hitman gameplay. Okay. The team implemented light extensions to action areas. These enabled the designers to link light groups to an area and automatically calculate whether the state of the environment should be light or dark. This impacts the time NPCs required to perceive a target, making it easier to stay hidden in darker areas. AI tech also extended the system that allows for visibility of large objects, such as vehicles. Large vehicles can be seen further distances, but we need to avoid approaches that cost too much on the CPU, such as doing raycast for very long distances. To prevent this, we can now describe the functionality of a large object depending on the degree of visual angle, basically at which distance it is a specific size from the observer's path. AI tech team. This also allows the team to defer the discovery phase of which objects are within range of large objects. This utilizes one query, which then allows each individual to correctly verify the occlusion of the object. Parameters of the visual field of view were also extended to be overridable based on AI state. For example, allowing pilots to see a greater distance and visually target on-foot characters. The team continued extending navigation links to support two main functionalities. Firstly, they enabled usable routing to function with entity links to allow door panels that are linked to a door to be correctly used by NPCs. This will allow them to understand which panel they should use to trigger the right interaction. Secondly, they exposed a way to define the cost of any of nav links based on specific conditions, such as increasing the cost for vaulting when a character isn't alerted or walking. Those costs allow the system to prescribe how preferable actions are from the NPC's perspective. For example, a character wouldn't vault, which is a physically demanding action, if not needed. But you could also add a trait where some dude is a parkour asshole who's just going to vault on everything. So, kind of changes that up a little bit. Work began to properly allow NPCs to drive ground vehicles. The team are currently verifying the setup of this section of vehicles to use as reference. They also set up code to switch to the right nav mesh when driving a vehicle and select the right path follower. Finally, for AI tech, the team worked on locomotion refactor, which involved integrating current work into different streams to begin stabilizing bugs. They also experimented with foot locking during MoveNet that are currently verifying how to use the functionality on various aspects of locomotion, such as during sharp turns. They also implemented a first frame adjustment for seamless transition code to improve entering usables. This will play a specific animation at the specific location with a specific pose. All right. AI vehicles. Last month, AI vehicles worked with flight design to deliver a battle turret. Okay. Last month, the AI vehicles worked with flight design to deliver a turret battle that occurs early in the campaign. This involved reworking Wave 0 that will be used as a standard for the rest of the waves during the whole chapter. This includes a new behavior that consists of Vandal ships attacking, the Javelin turret picking stunt splines placed by the designers. In addition, they completed various work support tasks for designers working on different flight-based chapters. It's a little bit of a spoiler. I know what it's for, but you're in a javelin shooting at FanDuel. That's kind of obvious if you've watched some of the stuff, but yeah. Animation. In October, the animation team continued to improve zero-G gameplay to animate new weapons, including a coil grenade and a coil rifle. Very cool. They then moved to blocking out restraint animations and created female spec op and guard animations for AI team. Blockouts were also done for bin rummaging and the beggar. For Vandal, further work was done on executions, pilot posing, and sharp turns to improve locomotion. This bespoke locomotion was created for the story characters too. Work was also done on animations for the firing range, and the rig for quadruped predators was tested. Quadruped predators! That's interesting. Finally, a 3-day mocap shoot was done for the new Manchester stage, including focusing on stealth takedowns and mastery levels, non-spec op level combatants, and various social AI improvements to better tie them into the environment. Very cool. Good to hear that it's been working. Art characters. Character art continued modeling major Navy clothing assets and the Screaming Galson's armor. They also began skinning assets for Shubin. Tech animation continued to support character art, processing the remaining scan data for character heads, and creating white box rigging for 2 key models. Screaming Galsons is a big factor. They constantly come up in Squadron, in the Squadron monthly reports, and I believe they are a hostile gang in Odin. They're not friendlies. And Shubin is the Shubin mining station. So, engine. In October, the physics team worked on various improvements, including. Okay, let me back this up. I am not a programmer. I am not an engine seer. I do not know the canticles of the machine spirit. I am not a Starfleet engineer. I do not have the ability to turn rocks into replicators. I am not a floating gelatinous ball of jelly that the Forerunners made to be able to disassemble and reassemble everything. I am not an engineer in any way, shape, or form. So I do not know most of this stuff that's being said. If you do, mention it down below in the comments below. So that being said, I'm going to move forward. I'm also going to pull up a discussion I had with Darj, who explained it a little bit better than I could. Find it. All right. That being said, let's get to the engine. In October, physics team worked on various improvements, including brush physicalization, which was put into queries of 32 entries each and forced to be processed in parallel. Spawn batch finalization was reworked to wait for all brush archetypes and their material clones to be fully physicalized before finalizing the spawn entities, and the root spawn batch can now be queried from outside the entity system. A physics event was added for cluster breakage along with an entity event that detaches the corresponding completed compounded entity. Additionally, various optimizations were made to improve low-level data access and reduce contention. Also, the physics environment is no longer woken during the bulk destruction of brushes unless they have a collider. Lastly, severe stalls during entity deletion as well as the network aspects of breakability were fixed. All right, I'm going to read some of this. No, I'm not going to read that. I was looking through some of it. I don't think it's good. We'll get through it. On the renderer, more progress was made on Gen 12 transition. A lot of work was done on particles. Among other things, the Light Atlas stage was rewritten to make use of material permutation cache. A lot of code on the GPU particle system was refactored and cleaned up. The particle submission code and its PSO management were rewritten as well. Furthermore, light lists are now managed per scene basis, which will eventually help simplify the tiled shading stage. Additionally, opaque sun shadows for gas clouds, image ghosting, and various game post effects, water droplets, flashbang, ocular migraine, blood vision, the projectile manager, RTT support functionality, and render target debug viz were ported to Gen 12. Support for transient scene renderer passes was completed and collision checks for resource sets were added. Offline cube maps now use their own pipeline to allow for different feature sets. Lastly, lots of optimizations and cleanups were made all around. So a lot of that is Gen 12 stuff. Just kind of stuff being moved to Gen 12. Regarding atmosphere and volumetric clouds, improvements were made to the Gen 12 code by adopting the transient passes made available in September. Furthermore, a preview mode was implemented to help lighting artists setting up planet atmospheres. On the core engine, the team made additional improvements to entity lifetime management. This involved adding code to group objects for lifetime management, and how entity deletion is handled on stream out. All legacy entity lifeline code was removed. The entity allocator was changed to be page-based. In-engine file mapping support was completed, i.e. faster P4K file access. Initial steps were done to run all game code through include what you use to remove unnecessary header dependencies, which should ultimately lead to faster incremental compile times. Lastly, in case of failed memory allocations, it is now possible to identify relevant code owners and list them in bug reports automatically to speed up bug processing. Very cool. That's the engine. A lot of this stuff is Gen 12 stuff and some other optimizations, it seems like. Now, we're getting to the features. Following on from the persistent entity streaming, the Squadron 42 feature team began implementing the save/load system. Because PES stores the state of all entities in the universe, the team can utilize it to save progress. They're currently in the first stages of testing, saving, and reloading, ensuring everything restores correctly. That's interesting. This is the first mention of PES being required for Squadron 42. I wonder if server meshing is also required for Squadron 42. For those of you who don't know, Squadron 42 is Star Citizen. Actually, let me do this because this is probably... Squadron 42 is Star Citizen. And I don't mean that they work on the same engine and they share assets. I mean, they're the same games, down to their fundamental cores. Star Citizen, or Squadron 42 is just Star Citizen, but not online and with cutscenes. That's it. They're the same games. So when you see CIG talking about how, oh, well, we needed to pull these factors out to work on Squadron 42, what they're saying is they needed to develop it for Squadron 42 first and then import it into the game. And we already saw from this month's Star Citizen aspect, or Star Citizen's monthly report, some of that stuff is already coming into Star Citizen now. the movement system that they were implementing for like climbing up ladders and like parkour jumping and stuff that they showed off at CitizenCon, that's already being worked on. It's already been ported over to Star Citizen. So when you see stuff like this, it's important to remember that they are fundamentally the same. So what you see in Star Citizen is what you see in Squadron. They're effectively at the same state, maybe 6 months difference, because Squadron 2 gets a little bit more stuff. So. And for server meshing, why I think server meshing might be important is more to do with how the game breaks up the universe to make it more manageable. Because you wouldn't have server meshing wouldn't work in the same way that we have online servers. It would just spin up a new server on your system, but it would be allocated to a different part to kind of spread that out a little bit. And no, someone's saying. They mentioned long ago that Squadron 42 would need an online connection. No, I do not believe that Squadron 42 requires an online connection, because everything is done offline. This is not an always online game. Not that I know of, at least. The Mission Manager app is currently being implemented into the player's mobiGlass, allowing them to access mission briefing, current and completed objectives, and report on how well they did once a mission is complete. Additional polish work was given to the new character customizer based on feedback from design. Work continued on the crane mechanic, adding additional modes for varying types of cranes and their functionality. This will allow the operator to attach, drop, and stack crates. That's for gameplay, but it's mostly for puzzles, would be my guess for Squadron. New security token functionality was also worked on to control access for various aspects of a level. Last month, Gameplay Story continued to using motion capture data to update scenes. The main scene work was in Chapter 11, which was due to the environment layout changing. Needed a full implementation pass to get it fully functioning. Several scenes were also updated to make them work with the AI characters, who now enter and leave smoothly. Start and end poses were updated for scenes in Chapter 4, 6, and 8. Some of these had extra polish pass to make them function better with the player. Lastly, 2 new scenes were created to allow characters to work on top of the Gladius. These are still work in progress and will require new mocap at a later date. Graphics and VFX Programming. Last month, the Graphics and VFX Programming team focused on damage maps. This involved fixing crashes and various issues, including missing initial damage on debris, incorrect damage on map sizes, and inconsistencies between ship sizes. Time was also spent investigating networking and persistence for debris. Further progress was made for porting gas clouds and CPU particles to Gen 12. The Gen 12 GPU marker refactor was also completed, and some issues were fixed relating to the hair and hologram shaders. For ongoing data pipeline refactor, the team continued to work on skin files, allowing compacted, non-split files to be completed or loaded. They compiled or loaded. They also implemented process groups in support of multiple input formats. Development of screen space shadows began, which involved adjusting ray tracing to account for thin objects. Work was also done on anti-aliasing lines for aux geometry, editor debug, and UI for use on the star map. They also added new features to the UI mesh shader, multi-scale scale texturing, bi/triplanar projection smoothing, alongside enabling wetness effects to work with blood, sweat, and tears. The team closed out Rastar version 1 and fixed remaining bugs and crashes raised by the content teams. There were also various fixes submitted for Rivers, and R&D began to work on water sim and water rendering improvements. That's effectively what they had in Star Citizen stuff, because, again, Squadron 40 and Star Citizen are the same game. A lot of this stuff is just going to be ported from back and forth. Level design. It's important to point out that there are 3 level design teams: FPS, Space, and Social. Those are the 3 main level design teams for Squadron. October saw FPS team focusing on one of the larger locations in the game that spans multiple chapters. They're closing in on finalizing the last few blockouts of this environment, and gameplay implementation is well underway. While combat AI is taking shape, FPS began placing greater emphasis on dialing in enemy confrontations. The flight team continued to collaborate with other design teams to push the first half of the game to a more polished state. Part of the game's dialogue was written before certain mechanics were in the final state, so some of the tutorials were tweaked to accommodate the final designs. They also worked closely with narrative to flesh out some of the quieter gameplay sections. Narrative. The narrative team continued with detailed reviews of gameplay chapters. In addition to alterations to several existing scenes to improve clarity, a handful of new scenes had dialogue written and scratch audio recorded. This included a scene with two outlaws debating the best way to breach a locked door. A small scene like this serves to provide some flavor of life to the AI combatants, but also helps direct the player towards their next objective, what their next objective is, and how to potentially bypass a puzzle. The next steps will be to test the dialogue additions during the future playthroughs and make any additional adjustments as needed. Narrative team. Development of the dynamic dialogue system continued with which is used by background characters as they go about their lives. The latest patch led to a more concise line set that will allow for greater flexibility with how lines are used to accommodate a variety of scenarios. These background characters are not meant to distract players from scripted character content, but provide a general sense of activity and immersion. That's something I've been hoping for a long time. They've mentioned this a couple times. I think it'll add a lot of diversity in Star Citizen, at least, if you have people just kind of talking about the news of the day, talking about the politics, talking about shipments of food, talking about the Sadaball game last night, those sorts of things. Because that adds a lot more fleshed out reality, because people do that in real life. And it'll give people some context for what the universe is like. And Squadron is very important, since it's a story game, to have that aspect, because it won't always be shown to you through the gameplay. So hearing about Sadaball, hearing about this other stuff is important. The team added names and description strings for a variety of naval uniforms, bespoke weapons, and military gadgets. They also reviewed updates to the military mobiGlas with regards to how mission information will be displayed, and began the validation process to ensure subtitles match the dialogue as recorded. That's an important thing to remember. I think what we saw for the Squadron 40 for the mobiGlas update at CitizenCon was the military mobiGlas, not the civilian mobiGlas. So we may see something different when it comes to the mobiGlas we get in Star Citizen. Sometimes during an actor's performance, they can adjust the line slightly from how it was written, and it's important for us that subtitles are as accurate as possible. All right. We're almost done. These are usually shorter because there's not as much content for Squadron. QA. QA continue to support cinematics by reproducing issues found during development and chasing up outstanding bugs. Last month, focus was also on bug validation and reporting alongside recording scenes for a review. In addition, QA polished general editor testing forward to ensure the tools used by the team are working as intended and the development workflow remains stable. A new embedded role was assigned to allow for more in-depth testing and more concise feedback. UI. Last month, the UI team continued to work closely with the vehicle team on heads-up displays, HUD, and multifunction displays, MFD. This allowed adjusting the HUD to incorporate new elements along with reworking the UI style of the one manufacturer to give it more character and make it feel more unique. Now that the vehicle team has some of the new MFD screens working in-game, a pass was done to improve their appearance and help with the building blocks UI setup to create a solid template to work from going forward. UI also concepted several more interactive screens for gameplay puzzles and made visual and control improvements to the star map. All very cool stuff. Lastly, VFX. In October, the VFX team continued overhauling the particle library, making the most of several improvements to the particle system to allow for greater flexibility. This includes being able to override various settings per effect in a level, letting the artist focus on higher quality of effect without having to maintain each instanced version. Further improvements were made in the new quantum travel effects, with new refractive particles spawning around a ship's signed distance field. Finally, the VFX team implemented a task pool, which allows for the artists to tackle various miscellaneous tasks that have accumulated in the backlog. This typically consists of minor bugs and quality of life improvements. It's been great to be able to focus on these things while continuing to support major content and features. VFX team. All right. Bit of a shorter one, more on track. But what we learned here is a lot of stuff from Star Citizen ported over. We know that the MFDs are working now in game, as well as new HUDs being worked on. The other thing to pull out was narrative. They're starting to tweak some things here and there to improve and just kind of dial things in. Lots of FPS implementation and FPS AI implementation, as well as flight teams kind of working on more closely with like the first half of the game to be more polished with the flight gameplay. We also got gameplay story, motion capture stuff, the first use of the new motion capture stage, lots of updates for the Gladius. We're getting PES in Squadron 42, so that's new. Engine stuff, characters, we're getting the Screaming Galsons and Navy uniforms, all stuff we've been seeing before. Animation was zero-G gameplay, new weapons, and coil grenade and coil rifles, and Van Duel stuff. Vehicles are now, you got the Javelin, AI vehicle, Javelin gunners actually pointing at a target and shooting them, which is nice. And a lot of AI tech, which we've talked about before, the new stuff. Oh, and a new quadruped Predator being worked on. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think the biggest takeaway was the PES. The PES is part of Squadron 42, and that is a question to be raised: is how much online connectivity is needed. I don't think it works the way that people think it is, but let me know. What do you think in the comments below? What do you think about the progress report? About anything else? Let me know. And of course, if you like this, if you enjoyed this content, let me know as well, because I don't know if this is effective. Like, do people want me to do Squadron 42 and Star Citizen monthly reports? I can continue to do that if this is effective, if this helps you out. And if you really enjoy this and you know other people who would enjoy this as well, share this video with them, because that's the only way that I can grow and get more people, more eyes in this, so I can go, hey, yeah, this is valuable. This is a good time. But as always, remember to like, subscribe, and like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.